Hi, I'm James McGuire, and on today's eSpeaks, we're looking at one of the most difficult challenges that companies face, one of the most important challenges, which is how to scale IT to meet increasing business demands. To discuss that, I'm joined by a major industry expert. With me is Stephen Franchetti, CIO at Samsara. Stephen, very good to have you with us today.
It's a pleasure to be with you here today, James. Look forward to the conversation this morning.
I think there are companies all across the US, all across the world, really, that are right now dealing with this issue. Like we've got all sorts of expenses to manage. However, we need more in the way of IT and IT infrastructure.
Mhm.
How do we scale up? How do we scale up cost effectively?
Mhm.
What trends do you see as companies grapple with this issue, and what are some typical problems?
Yeah, so clearly there's a lot at play right now with the macro uncertainties that are going on and companies looking to do more with less and really potential pressure on IT budgets and layoffs are happening across technology. And really none of this makes it easier for the CIO to deliver on their agenda and to your point, to scale IT. But maybe stepping back a little bit about my background, I've worked for a few rocket ship, fast-paced, hyper-growth companies. I actually joined Workday around about the time they went public and saw
Interesting.
them drive scale as a company. I was actually the first CIO at Slack, joining that organization before they went public and
Really?
helping them to drive scale. And now at Samsara, where I've been for the last 2 years and essentially doing the same thing. But if I was to think about one common thread between those three companies, it's about how do you scale an organization and keep your agile edge as you grow. And it's almost like the law of large numbers, right? As your business begins to grow, you're adding customers and new SKUs and products and selling into new markets and geographies. And your business just becomes more complex. And you actually run the risk of your operations slowing down because of that complexity. So I think the key is how do you keep the best parts of the startup culture, that culture of innovation and speed, to keep your agile edge as you grow. And for me, I always think about three ingredients to kind of answer that question, which are kind of the secret sauce for me. Firstly, it's about automation, right? Automation to drive productivity and ultimately simplify the user experience for your customers and also for your employees. And it seems like there's more opportunity than ever in this space right now with the explosion of AI. The next thing I would say is about investing in data efforts, right? These big mountains of big data, they're not going to get any smaller as we move forward. We're creating huge amounts of data in any organization. So investing in that data stack becomes really important. And then last but certainly not least, James, it's really about the people you have in your team. And as I always say, you're only as good as the people you have in your team within your organization. And I think bringing those three elements together to drive an architecture that actually makes sense to run your business at scale, a set of business processes, and probably most importantly, an overall user experience that makes sense to run your business at scale, then I think you're onto something, right? That's huge value for any business out there, James.
The personnel, no doubt about that. Sometimes I think that piece does get overlooked. I'm curious from where you sit. When you talk about the idea of scale, we always think about cloud as being this magic platform for scaling. Is cloud the answer that it was? Has cloud turned out to be the answer that it was promised to be when we were promised this hyperscaling environment?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I would say absolutely yes. I think about the Samsara environment, and we are born in the cloud. We're an 8-year-old company. Talk a little bit about ultimately what Samsara does, but we're really here to help digitize the world of physical operations. And we talk about physical operations. We're talking about industries like transportation, logistics, construction, energy, and utilities. Even industries like farming are in there as well. And by the way, this is a huge market that we're talking about 40% of the world's GDP. So it's truly massive.
Mhm.
And these are industries that have traditionally been underserved from a technology perspective, with companies running systems that are often decades old. And so really what we're doing at Samsara, to your point, is moving them to the cloud, digitizing their business, actually providing our customers with data and insights to give them end-to-end visibility into their entire business operation and actually enable them to drive efficiency, safety, and sustainability within their businesses. Incredibly important right now, given the macro conditions out there with disruptions in supply chain and rising interest rates and fuel costs. And companies are really looking for ways to become more efficient. So for me, I mean, cloud is the answer. I consider myself a cloud native,
Hmm.
and we've actually pioneered what we call the connected operations cloud,
Okay.
really allowing our customers to analyze and act on their IoT data. And if you think about, say, a large transportation company like Werner Enterprises or Estes Express Lines, two of our largest customers, and actually the two of the largest transportation and logistics companies in the US. They literally have thousands of vehicles spread across the country. And in the past, it's been incredibly difficult for those companies to actually pull data together. It's almost like those individual vehicles or assets or data islands, if you like. And what we've enabled them to do through our cloud platform is pull all of that information together about things like the efficiency of a particular vehicle, the health of the vehicle, the location of the vehicle. We're actually processing about 6 trillion data points on an annual basis. And of course, the power of computing allows them for us to provide insights to our customers. And they can look at doing things like reducing emissions, analyzing video data to improve road and workplace safety, and then unlock digital workflows for employees in the field or in the office for that matter. And of course, we're using AI within all of that in our suite of technologies as well to provide those types of insights to our customers. But it's all enabled by this cloud SaaS world that we've stepped into over the last couple of decades, James.
Hmm. Hmm. It's interesting. You have talked about automation, but I think it's such a big topic these days. Can you talk a bit more about the role of automation and any advice you might have for companies to further their automation deployment?
Yeah, well, it seems like it's all about AI and automation right now with the kind of explosion of generative AI that we've seen
Right.
really over the last year. And I think efficiencies driven by AI and automation are more impactful, to your point, than ever before, especially given the current times that we live in. My main advice would be keep abreast of what's going on out there in the market. I think about IT teams. I have this conversation with my own IT team, and they always get caught up in what's going on in the moment, almost like the project du jour or the issue du jour, looking down and trying to execute on the day-to-day and what's in front of them. And I think it's super important, especially right now, to look up and out to actually what's happening out there in the industry. And it feels like we're in a time where AI is finally ready for prime time with the explosion of
Hmm.
generative AI applications coming out that solve for very specific use cases.
Hmm.
For example, we're using MoveWorks
Hmm.
in IT for automating IT support interactions with our employee base. We automate about 25% of those interactions to provision software, provide knowledge for users. Jasper for marketing content to generate that great marketing content. GitHub Copilot is a great example, again, of developing software. You think about generating code automatically or automagically, as they say, for developers as well. And ultimately, the way I look at it is you want the people you hire to focus on the job that you hire them for, ultimately, right? You want the sales folks to be out there engaging with customers and engineers to be cutting code and building great products instead of spending time on administrivia. So using AI and automation to alleviate those tasks really enables our employees and customers to focus on the higher value work, higher order work.
Hmm.
So we're really looking for ways to educate yourself and understand what's going on out in the industry from an AI and automation perspective. And then I think most importantly, looking for ways to experiment within your organization. Choose impactful use cases where you can iterate quickly and build momentum within the organization. And there's certainly a hype cycle associated with AI and automation right now. There's no question about that. But I think the reason people are so excited about it is the potential for it to drive unprecedented productivity within any organization, James.
Well, interesting about the hype cycle. I think you're very right about that. AI is, of course, enjoying an enormous hype cycle at this moment. I'd say sort of an exponential hype cycle. The funny thing about that is I thought last year before, ChatGPT burst on the scene, IoT was having really its year. I thought 2022 was in many ways the year of IoT, only growing bigger this year, of course. I know Samsara has a strong focus on IoT. Can you talk about Samsara and its IoT offerings? How is Samsara addressing the IoT needs of its clients?
Yeah, I mean, and really, we kind of touched on this before, but it's about how do we deploy IoT, almost like inexpensive sensors
Mhm.
out in our customer base, to allow them to all of a sudden gain insights, analytics about their end-to-end business operations. And again, we're playing in this realm of physical operations and digitizing our customers' environments. The hardware is almost a means to an end. IoT is clearly in the sensors we deploy, our video cams, our temperature sensors, our vehicle gateways, gathering information about various different assets. And they could be things like, tractors within a farming environment. They could be things like, supply chain logistic equipment, transportation, vehicles across the country, across the world for that matter. And again, traditionally, those things have been very disparate, very difficult to gather information about those individual assets and bring them together in a centralized environment. So deploying these really simple and inexpensive IoT sensors allows us to actually gather that, aggregate that information, and provide those insights to our customers. And there's really great examples of where it's making a significant impact. I think about Liberty Energy as a customer I just spoke to recently, and they're a leading oil field services firm, and they've actually used our AI, actually our Samsara video solutions, to leverage AI and computer vision within those solutions to detect things like unsafe behavior within their workplace, whether it's a driver who's texting on their phone, or whether it's an accident avoidance that can happen, we're detecting out there, or whether it's actually in a physical workplace within a warehouse, where we're, again, detecting inefficiencies or unsafe behavior. And they've actually been able to reduce their accident rate by 50% over the course of the last year, which for a company of their size is super significant. And it's equated to literally hundreds of thousands of dollars in savings for that particular customer. So ultimately, the goal we have at Samsara, and I think in the IoT or the industrial IoT industry in general, but particularly at Samsara, is helping our customers make the shift from physical operations, an area that's typically underserved from a technology standpoint, to more connected operations, really digitizing how they run their business, James.
Mhm. Well, I think the big question that many companies are looking to is, what's the future and how can we get ready for it now, specifically in the area of scaling IT? Because it feels like IT has gotten far more complicated with AI growing exponentially. Cloud continues to evolve rapidly. IoT, machine learning, data analytics, they're all evolving rapidly at the same time. What do you see in terms of the future of scaling IT? What will this look like in 3 to 5 years from now?
Oh my goodness, yes, it's the billion-dollar question. I think about this
It
a
is.
lot.
It is. It maybe the several billion-dollar question.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Nowadays, certainly. And we talk about this as a team a lot, actually. And if I was to look into my crystal ball into the future, I think future scaling in the years ahead may mean actually more of what we've seen in the past. And they often say that the best predictor of the future is what you've seen in the past, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think trends that we've seen around speed and scale are going to be with us into the future, clearly, and they're only going to accelerate as we move forward. But I think the milestones, to your point, in the future may be shaped by, I think the magnitude of these changes will bring even more innovation and new business models as we move forward. And you touched on a few of them, but I think about things like clearly accelerating AI. And it feels like now, again, AI is ready for prime time. I was reading a study the other day that predicted by 2024, more than 50% of user touches will be augmented by AI, either from a speech standpoint or the written word or computer vision algorithms, which is pretty staggering when you think about it. It's only a year away, right? So it feels like we're finally getting closer to that virtual assistant, which has really been the promise of AI. I think the other disruptions that are going to continue are things like low-code development platforms,
Mm-hmm.
really looking to accelerate productivity for developers, which I think is going to be really big, and will continue to grow in its focus. And then it's clear, and we touched on this before, that we're going to create heaps more data within organizations. We create a lot of data. We talked about 6 trillion data points that we're processing on an annual basis just at Samsara. That will continue to increase as we increase our business. So investment in the modern data stack becomes really important. But I think the important point to me is I always think about the people elements of this, right? We think about these disruptions rapid firing at our businesses from all this accelerated innovation. Mm-hmm. And of course, it means we also need to be nimble and agile and open-minded. And so I think it's up to the IT organization to kind of harness all of this capability and bring it to bear to add value for the business. And, to me, it's about the people and employees, and we're going to need to adapt, right? There's going to be more milestones in the future around tech literacy. Technology will become literally core to every role in the organization. So continuous learning and experimentation with new technology, teams are going to need to make space for mistakes, right? And maybe even budget and buffer for experimentation. So to me, when I think about the future of scaling IT, to your question, to meet those business demands, it really comes back to readying your team to take advantage of this new wave of innovation that we're seeing out there, James.
Mm-hmm. I'm glad, Stephen, that you brought up the idea of the staff again. It's amidst all the hullabaloo about AI and machine learning and data analytics, sometimes we forget about the actual staff. It does make a difference. In general, I'd say thank you. I mean, you've said a lot of great stuff. I've actually learned something. Thank you so much. It's going to be a really interesting sector to follow in the years ahead. Stephen, thank you so much for sharing your insight today.
It's been great to talk to you this morning, James, and good luck with the rest of the series.